This is why you need a hand-cranked grain mill in your survival toolkit. Before we dive in, don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a tip on timeless survival tools. If you've ever held a piece of history that still carries the weight of its purpose, a weight you feel not just in your hands, but in your gut, then you already know why we're here. Today we're stepping away from the grand narratives of battles and generals, and we're getting our hands dirty. We're going into the forgotten corners of a World War II-era home front, into the cellar workshop or the backyard shed, to uncover a device that stood between a family and hunger. This isn't about a weapon in the traditional sense. It's about a tool of absolute resilience, a piece of survival engineering so refined and so trusted that it faded into the background of daily life, only to be rediscovered by those who understand that true preparedness is built on proven systems. I'm talking about the humble, hand-cranked grain mill. In a world before supermarkets and just-in-time delivery during the rationing and uncertainty of the world wars, this device was a linchpin of civilian survival. Let's uncover why this overlooked artifact is a masterclass in sustainable preparedness, straight from the pages of history. The mill was a silent sentinel on the home front. You know, when we study the world wars, we tend to focus on trenches, tanks and ration kits, but honestly, the real struggle for sustainability was fought in kitchens and pantries. Ration books were issued, supplies were diverted to the front, and, well, store shelves grew thin. For families, especially those in rural areas, or anyone preparing for a prolonged siege or disruption, securing a calorie was one thing. Processing it into edible food was quite another. The hand-cranked grain mill, it ascended from a simple farm tool to a critical home front appliance. It transformed whole grains, which could be stored for years in sealed, rodent-proof containers, into flour, meal and cracked feed. This wasn't hobbyist baking. This was caloric conversion. A family with a bushel of wheat and a reliable mill, well, they held security in a way a stack of canned goods simply couldn't match, because that wheat was versatile, compact and long-lasting. The mill was the key that unlocked it. Wartime engineering demanded unbreakable simplicity. The best mills you'll find from this era, often bearing names like Enterprise, Arcadia or Quaker City, are monuments to overbuilt, repairable engineering. These were manufactured in an age where a product's lifetime was measured in generations, not years. Cast from heavy iron, fitted with hardened steel grinding plates and using simple shaft and crank mechanics, they have no circuit boards, no rare earth magnets, no proprietary parts. Every component can be understood, maintained or repaired with basic tools. This was deliberate. In the 1940s, a broken motor or an unavailable replacement belt during a supply shortage wasn't just an inconvenience, it was a crisis. The hand-crank mill assumes the failure of everything else. It compensates with sheer brute force mechanical integrity. When you turn the crank, you are the motor. Its reliability is yours to generate. Nutrition and morale were ground together daily. Beyond mere calories, the mill provided control and morale. A wartime family could adjust the grind from coarse cornmeal for porridge to fine flour for a morale-boosting loaf of bread. Identifying a true wartime-era mill requires a keen eye. If you're hunting for one of these survivors at an estate sale or in an old barn, you really need to know what you're handling. First, heed the weight. A proper mill has a heft that surprises you. It feels dense and solid because it is. Tap the body. It should ring with a dull, low tone, not a thin, hollow sound. Examine the grinding mechanism. The adjustment knob or screw should still turn, even if stiffly, allowing you to change the grind. Crucially, inspect the grinding plates, the burrs. You want to see the intricate machine patterns worn smooth from use, not cracked or damaged. Avoid lightweight aluminum models. These are often later reproductions meant for occasional use, not the daily enduring workload of a home front sustained through years of war. Restoring a historic mill demands respect, not aggression. This is where, honestly, many well-intentioned people ruin a perfectly good piece of history. The goal is preservation, not making it look factory new. Never, ever sandblast the grinding plates. You will destroy the precise cutting geometry that makes the mill effective. Instead, disassemble the unit carefully. So, to start, soak rusted parts in a mild solution of white vinegar. Then you'll want to use brass brushes and a bit of elbow grease to remove scale, and after that neutralize the acid with a baking soda bath. Make sure to dry everything thoroughly. Next, reassemble the mill and run a handful of dry, cheap corn or wheat through it. This natural abrasive action will, polish the grinding surfaces just as intended. Oh, and don't forget, lubricate only the external crank bearings with a food-safe mineral oil. This respectful process is honestly how these mills were maintained for decades, and it's exactly why they still work today. The mill's philosophy is, really, the ultimate survival takeaway. Integrating a hand crank mill into your own preparedness plan isn't about nostalgia. It's about adopting a proven survival philosophy. This tool represents a complete system long-term grain storage, paired with a fail-safe processing method. In a grid-down or supply chain collapse scenario, you could have a ton of wheat, but without a way to process it, its value just, plummets. With a mill, one person can produce a day's flour in just minutes. Paired with a simple Dutch oven, or, even a makeshift stove, you recreate the exact resilient food system that sustained countless families through the deepest uncertainties of the 20th century. It operates independently of fuel, electricity, or any external parts. In this, it really does outperform any gadget that's dependent on finite resources. The warriors of the home front knew that survival wasn't about stockpiling gadgets, it was about securing processes. That hand-crank mill, bolted to a basement bench, was more than a tool. It was a statement of endurance. It whispered that as long as you had the strength to turn the crank, you had the power to transform seed into sustenance. At Warfield Survival, we believe in preserving this knowledge, not as a museum piece, but as a living, turning, grinding truth. If this deep dive into practical history resonates with you, if you believe in solutions with the grease of use still on them, then, hit that subscribe button. Share this with someone who needs to see that the greatest survival lessons are often waiting silently in the corners of history, ready to be put back to work.